Welcome to
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose is a podcast of inspiring people whose stories help you see things differently, live with intentionality, elevate the way you participate in the world, and take the necessary leaps in your life to seek and find your passions. Come with us and develop the courage to wholeheartedly pursue your purpose and unleash your truest potential. Today's podcast episode is a new kind of episode. It's actually a podcast episode that I'm republishing from my friend's podcast, Catching Z's, The Millennial's Guide to Mindfulness. The guest in this episode is me, Tanner Badgley. That's right, I'm featured in my first ever podcast. In this guest appearance, my friend, mentor, and podcasting accountability partner, Nick Zolfo, and I really broke down my 10-day Vipassana meditation course I just completed here in Thailand. For those of you that don't know, Vipassana is a technique developed by Gautama the Buddha 2,500 years ago. The word Vipassana means seeing things as they really are. Vipassana is about removing the root of your impurities through self-observation and mastery of the mind with the goal of happiness and liberation from suffering. Over 10 days, I spent over 100 hours developing the technique at a meditation center in Khon Kaen, Thailand. I observed precepts such as remaining silent, removing all entertainment, and abstaining from physical exercise and intoxicants. We woke up at 4 a.m. each day and worked with discipline until 9 p.m. I feel amazing and wonderful in such a sustainable way. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but also so incredibly invaluable. I feel so grateful to have discovered Vipassana. It works at the most root level of anything I've ever learned. I want to thank Nick Zolfo and Zach Darmon of the Catching Z's podcast for the work they did to put together our episode and the 40 other episodes with mindful guests that they have already published. I hope this episode is a gateway into the rest of the Catching Z's podcast. If you're intimidated by the idea of meditating or even too antsy, giving these guys 30 to 40 minutes of your time leaves you with a similar feeling as meditating and has all kinds of positive effects too. I think it's worth the listen. I decided to ask for permission to publish our episode directly into People of Purpose. Not because of the feat that I generally am proud to have accomplished, but because I hope it nudges you to do a course yourself. I actually think the mark of my success after leaving the course is if I can do my part to get the people I love and respect and wish the best for to do a 10-day course of their own. So aside from this brief introduction, here's my republication of the full episode entitled Tanner Badgley, host of the People of Purpose podcast, published by the wonderful podcast Catching Z's, The Millennial Guide to Mindfulness. Please enjoy this special episode featuring this week's Practice of Purpose, Vipassana Meditation.
Welcome to Catching Z's, The Millennial's Guide to Mindfulness. The vibes today are coming to you by my good friend Nick Zolfo and myself, Zach Darmon. Allow us to show you the love that's right in front of you. Allow us to show you the love that's all around you. But most importantly, allow us to show you the love that's within you. Hello everyone and welcome back to Catching Z's. This week's episode, we are thrilled to have a longtime fan of the show and role model to us, Tanner Badgley. Tanner is nothing short of someone who lives his life to the absolute fullest. And in his most recent adventure, he went on a 10-day meditation retreat in Thailand. We were lucky enough to be able to interview him within the first few hours of him leaving the retreat to learn all of his insight in as fresh of a way as possible. We do have to warn you that because of the location of where Tanner is located, the quality of sound isn't at the highest level. But I can promise that what this interview lacks in sound quality, it makes up in knowledge, content, and love.
What's going on? Like, what are your thoughts? How was it?
Yeah, well, I spent 10 days at first in a place that felt kind of like I was checking myself into prison, and then it started to feel like this wonderful like haven to really go deep in myself, and it was everything. It was super challenging. It was really difficult. I hated it sometimes. I was really annoyed. I was bored, but I also had like extreme opposites of those too. I was like, this is a wonderful thing I'm doing. I have a lot of like mental focus and concentration. I feel like I'm living a very pure lifestyle. I'm uncovering like really deep rooted impurities in myself. I'm having like really nuanced,
Yeah.
wise understandings about kind of subtle things. I'm seeing patterns that I had never seen before. I was part of a community of people that like acknowledge one another but never talk to each other because they have like a rule about noble silence. And yeah, it was a pretty
Yeah.
cool experience. I've never done anything so full on intense like that. I feel wonderful right now.
What just to let's there's a lot to uncover there, I think, but start by, is this your first one? Is this the first retreat you've been on, or what's the history?
Well, I was in Thailand a year and a half ago, and I went to this I had 5 days off of school. I was a teacher, and so I went to try this 5 day thing. I wasn't part of any program. Their program at that one was 21 days. It was also Vipassana, but I only had 5 days, so I said, "Can I do 5 days?" And they said, "Yeah." And I got the taste of it there. So it was the same kind of rules, but I mean, I didn't really go deep at all. Like the first 3 days were just super hard. I had no idea. I like the motivation wasn't there. There wasn't like
Yeah. Okay.
there wasn't so much like theory explained to you. This one had like an hour and a half long Dhamma talk, they call it, where you have like an actual teacher explaining, why you do this and what the teachings are and how to understand it and conceptualize it with like stories and parables and like little things that help you to stay a little bit more grounded and focused and motivated. Whereas last time it was like, I'm sitting here, I hear things, I feel things, I don't really know what it's doing to me. I miss my phone, I miss reading, I want to exercise, I want to see people I love. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I learned a lot about myself last time, and I realized like I need to give this thing full justice. And a lot of people talk about the 10-day course. That's the kind of standard way of doing it. And I'm going to do a 10-day course when I get the time next. And a year and a half later, I'm back in Thailand, and I had the time, and I did it.
Yeah. It's to talk about then now this time compared to that when you just had the taste. What's the first couple of days? I guess let's start with they probably have some sort of routine you guys are going through. Walk through that briefly.
Yeah, so the daily schedule is 4:30 to 9 o'clock. You wake up, you are supposed to do about a 2-hour meditation. It's pretty long. You do it. They have a hall where you go, and there's about 40 people there that were checked into the same course as me.
Yeah.
And you can do it there, or you can do it in your room, or you can do it in what they call a meditation cell, which is like a little tiny, like, 5 by 5 sort of space that you sit in on a cushion and have your own like little box that you're in, like a sauna type of feeling. So you do that, and that's 2 hours, and then the light starts to happen. They start to have like different chanting things that are all in Pali language, like the language of the time of Buddha. And then you go to breakfast, and you have it's all vegetarian, pretty much vegan actually. I would say like 98% vegan, and a couple of things every once in a while where had some animal products, but never any meat. So pretty like vegan vegetarian diet, and take a little bit of a break. Can like rest in your bed or take care of some laundry or take a shower or something like that, or go on a little walk. It's a really peaceful place. And so there's like no cars, no noise of any city. There's like, it's just a lot of acreage, and you're deep inside it, and you just hear lots of birds and animals and insects. And yeah, it's really a natural environment. It's really cool. And then you have this morning session, which is back to back meditations that are, I think it was an hour and a half, like 4 straight hours of meditation. It was like, whew, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then, so you meditate, take a 10-minute break, and then they'd ring this bell, and ding, it like reverberates a lot. And then, and then you go to lunch after you do these 3 sessions. Lunch is a 2-hour break of time, so eat more vegetarian food. I ate a lot of food. because that lunch is your last real meal. So they don't want you to be consuming any heavy food after 12 o'clock. For old students, actually, the ones that this is not their first course, they only allow you to take tea. For me, I had like bread and peanut butter and Nutella and some little things to keep my bananas. They have these bananas always available. So I was always, had enough nutrition in me to feel like my blood sugar wasn't going crazy low or anything. And then I would always take a nap, like all the time. I was just exhausted by this point in the day because I'm working my mind like crazy. And then in the afternoon, same thing, back to back to back. Then do this dinner break. It's not dinner though; it's more just like a snack break. And then evening time, do a 1 hour meditation. And then we went to this Dhamma talk, and that was always, I think, my favorite part of the day because that was always like kind of the checkpoint I was looking forward to. I was like, when I make it to the Dhamma talk, then the day will be completed in my mind because it's not work anymore. You're listening to really interesting instruction. Like this guy is like a really renowned teacher. He's on like a video cast basically, and he's at some sort of seminar, and the camera's on him, and he has a microphone, and he's sitting on like a cushion with his wife next to him, and he's a Burmese guy who's been living and teaching in northern India for a long time. And he just gives really interesting instructions, starting with day one, what you're thinking about, what you're doing, why you're doing this, kind of the back history of how this sort of meditation style was created and how it was discovered, and ways in which it's really manifested in people's lives. Like thousands and thousands of people over the last 25 centuries have used this, and how it's like been maintained in its purest form as best as possible, and all that sort of stuff. And then kind of gets into some stories, ways of like kind of conceptualizing concepts. He'll like have like little examples. He's like, it's like you have 5 blind people and you want to teach them what an elephant is. You have one of them stroke the tail and they say an elephant is like a brush. You have like another stroke the leg and the elephant is like a post, and then another stroke like the toenail. It's like a rock. None of those are right, but the combination of all of them is like what the elephant is. So he has like little interesting things like that really help you to, oh, that makes sense. I can conceptualize it. So I look forward to that, and then the evening time is just another half an hour after that, and then go to bed.
Like as I'm asking the question about like, tell us what a day's like, I'm really thinking like, well, that's not what I want to know, not about the structure. I want to kind of let you freestyle here about, what was some of the findings, or what did you learn, or what's sticking out?
Yeah. Okay. So I did a 10-day Vipassana meditation course. Vipassana is a style of meditation that is to generate mental purity, to give one like control over their mind, as a way to find liberation from suffering and misery by looking inwardly at a very deep level. And you do so by observing these like 3 different concepts. One of them is called citta, which is living a moral life. So they have you take these different precepts that you agree to for 10 days. You will not break. Like one of them is you will not talk to anybody. So it's noble silence as a way to allow everyone to stay in their own individual space and not have all these outside energies interrupting that. Another one's like to be free of intoxicants. So you're not altering the state of your mind or your feelings or your mood. You're getting very in touch with whatever you're naturally feeling in this exact moment. And then they have things like a lot of division between men and women. You can not touch a woman. You can have no sexual contact, things like that. They want you to be free of any sort of thinking along those lines. Things like not killing anything. So like even like mosquitoes, you're not supposed to just react by killing them. You're supposed to recognize that everything has life. And if you're really trying to cultivate true inner peace, then you want all beings to be feeling happy and peaceful and well. So you recognize these sort of precepts. Another one is like no technology, no reading, no writing. It's all about like, and freeing yourself of any other practices. So they want you to like stop any like previous exercise you're doing or yoga. They don't want you to mix it with anything for 10 days. They want you to observe it in its purest form. And then after that, that creates like this groundwork or this framework that allows you to develop a pretty pure state of meditation. And then they start to work on your mental concentration, which is called samadhi. And they want you to do samadhi at the experiential level. And so that not just intellectualizing it and like having someone tell you about it and being like, okay, I understand. It's about actually doing it. So we were meditating about 11 hours a day. And so you're constantly like narrowing your focus so that you have a very sharp, pointed, focused mind. And it begins by the first few days, you're just noticing the breath coming in and out of your nose. You try to focus on that area kind of around your nostrils and above your upper lip. And that's where you keep trying to focus. So you sit for an hour and you try to feel the air coming in and coming out, any sensations going on around there, any tingling or vibrations or anything like that. And it's really hard at first. You don't feel a lot. You get super easily distracted for about 20 minutes at a time. I would just be on some chain of thought and come back and be like, wow, I just wasted a ton of time and I'm back to my breath. But as you do that, they want you to maintain perfect equanimity of mind. So you have a balanced, non-reactive mind, non-judgmental mind. You're just observing things. And so as you kind of combine that observation with the concentration, you're able to go to subtler levels within your bodily framework. And then they start to have you scan the body by day 4. And they ask you by day 4 to not change your position. So, it's really hard to sit cross-legged for an hour with your hands folded and not move around or want to change because you get burning in your knee or your hip or your back feels tired, all these like little reasons, but they want you to be able to be non-reactive to these sensations, to observe them. And so they ask you to basically develop your samadhi by sitting there, focusing your mind, concentrating, and then to feel the sensations as they are, not try to change them into some desired sensation you want, or not try to avoid them. And by doing that, you're able to go into like more subtler levels of your body. So you're just scanning like little bit by little bit, like your shoulder, your bicep, your tricep, your forearm, down your hands, each of the fingers, and you get different sensations as you do that. And so when you do that like round after round, hour after hour, I think we made like more than 100 hours of meditation in the whole process. You start to observe things at a pretty deep level that you feel, and some of the sensations are very gross sensations is what they call them, which are like very like solidified, intense, pretty negative feeling things, like you feel like a throbbing or like a clenching or a hot or cold or itching, or you like don't want it basically, but you're supposed to sit there and observe it with the understanding that things will pass. So they have this constant theory that that you are a part of nature. So, and nature has this law to it that everything is impermanent. Everything is always changing. And even within yourself, all your atoms and your cells are always arising and passing. So that feeling that you have is not just like a permanent sensation. It's what you feel right now in this moment. But as you observe it, you start to notice that it kind of dissipates, or it kind of moves to a new place, or the texture of it feels a little different, or the deepness feels like it kind of goes away. You can endure it, is what you start to realize. And so by the end, I'm able to sit for an hour and a half without changing anything about my position or my posture. In the beginning, every 10 minutes, I want to change how I was sitting, and I was allowed to change. So it's that combination of sharpening your mind and developing like this fortitude that you're gonna like not change things and not be like a reactive person. And then you go to this third level, which is called panya, which is basically like insightfulness from wisdom, the life experience that generates wisdom. And that comes from viewing things at different angles and different perspectives. And so you start to develop wisdom by having these first two things, the citta and samadhi, so like the moral, purified sort of precepts to life, and then the mental focus and concentration, and then that combination sends you to the next level, which is where you generate wisdom and insightfulness. And that's when you start to understand things like your your automatic responses to things in life are basically what pull you one way or the other. And this Vipassana technique teaches you that you don't have to be a product of all the outside sensations coming into you. You don't have to get angry and act angry, or get ecstatic and act overly ecstatic. If you maintain a balanced, equanimous mind, and observe these sensations as they're happening, as they're being felt inside the body, then that's when you develop like an inside strength that allows you to be non-reactive and to have choices about how you generate your actions. And that's what allows you to like live a peaceful, harmonious, happy life. And so you start to realize when you have cravings and aversions, those are the primary responses that humans have. Cravings are attachments, clingings, longings. It's that desired state that you want to feel, that you want that sensation to be. Or if it is in a desired state, you want to hold on to it and make it something that you always are feeling. But that's never how things work. That's what creates like addictions and cravings, and it ultimately leads to misery, because when you don't get what you want, it's the whole, like, he gave the example of a man wants to get rich so he can buy a car. That car is good, but he can buy a better car. He has 7 cars, not enough. He's ready for a helicopter. The helicopter is good, but he needs to go to another continent, so he gets an airplane. And this airplane could be a jet, so he gets a jet. And then, it's not enough. He needs a spacecraft. You have this like constant, like, it's never enough feeling. And that's like what that whole craving side of things is. And so instead of like just being like, wow, this is a wonderful, joyful thing, I'm like lost in my feeling right now, you maintain balanced, equanimous mind. You observe it as it's being experienced inside the body. So even when amazing things are happening outside of you, you still feel what's happening in my body. Maybe your heart feels light, or you feel like a general like tingling vibration around your head, or whatever, good sensations. And you recognize those, and you watch those, and you feel that they do pass. They leave you, and you don't need to feel like despair that those have gone. And then the opposite of this is aversions. So it's things like pain and displeasure and bitterness, resentment, hatred, unable to forgive, things that you want to run away from, you want to avoid, you want to push away, you want to like block out of your mind. Everyone has these things, you have ups and downs in life. And so when those downs come, you're not to be just automatically reactive to things like in a fight or flight sort of sense. If you develop this practice of Vipassana, then you become an observer of how those outside the sensations are being experienced in your body. And that may be like tightness or clean, or like, discomfort, or a desire to change position, or desire to crack your back, or, like clench your fists, or, all these sort of things. Even things like sighing, you have control over if you're going to do that. And so when you reach subtler and subtler understandings about how things are being experienced, that's how you develop inner wisdom. And then that combination leads you to the path towards what they call nibbana, which is like true liberation from your suffering, to where you're just living and giving outwardly, recognizing that you are completely part of nature. You're living in alignment with all the laws of nature, and that's what they call Dhamma, which is when you're in alignment with the laws of nature, and you're finding purpose and fulfillment, and you have sympathetic joy and compassion, and you recognize that you're a servant to others, and that's really the way to be living. And that starts by working on yourself at a deep mental level, getting mental mastery over yourself rather than being a slave to your reactive mind. And that's what you're essentially developing by doing hour and hour and hour of meditation, because they want you to go beyond just a devotional understanding. It's not about praying. It's not about like putting your faith in any sort of God or religious leader or sect or any sort of thing. And it's not about intellectual understanding. It's not about hearing the science of why this works, or about how this works, or someone's experience of it. It's about experiencing it yourself as it's being experienced in your body. And Yeah, and then in that process, you're going to a very root level of your mind and removing impurity after impurity. When you stop giving them energy, those cravings and aversions start to come out of you. He uses this example of it's like a fire. So you have all the firewood. The firewood is your cravings and aversions of your past, like when you were more unconscious of these things, because they've buried themselves deep in your subconscious. And so when somebody says something to you that really speaks to like a core part of you and really generates like a lot of negativity, like you hate that person, and you hold on to that, and that puts more firewood on that fire, and the fire keeps burning greater and greater and greater. But when you stop putting firewood to those things, the previous firewood burns up, and the fire eventually dies away. And so as these things rise up, as you feel a great, like terrible, intense sensation in your throat, and you feel your muscles like clinging up, you sit there and observe it and watch it pass, feel it pass. And these things start to dissipate and dissipate and dissipate and dissipate. And then you start to feel you feel lighter and more peaceful. You just feel like you have a greater understanding of yourself, and you look at the world in a very positive, loving sort of lens. And it's awesome, yeah.
It sounds like you learned a thing or two at this place.
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
That was cool, man. I think one of the things we talk about here often on Catching Z's is about how big of an impact kind of suffering has on us. And all I picture is like those first couple of days, how much you have to go through, just like, fidgety or just like uncomfortableness. Talk to us about how the suffering, how that began and how it progressed as you were there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that day 2 is the hardest day. He talks about how that's generally what people consider to be the hardest day. Day 1's not so bad because I don't think you're all in. I think you're still kind of like sitting there, and it's kind of actually nice. You finally have some moments of solitude, and you're not so committed to focusing on that breath in and out every single second for an hour, because that's way too intense. You know that you're not expected to do that perfectly because you don't have that mental capacity yet. You haven't developed the practice. And so you go on these like long chains of thought that are pretty wonderful in general. For me, I haven't had like a major like trauma-filled lifestyle, but then you also think about some of the negative things. But day 2 is really hard because you finally face that stuff. You become like accountable to yourself. You're like, this is when I start to commit to this program. Like, and as you commit, you say, I'm coming back to the breath. I'm coming back to the body sensation. I'm not going to like have some clinging or attachment to this thought process. And I think for me, I struggle with trusting my memory. I get some idea or some insight about, like, I have the podcast of my own, People of Purpose, and I have some like stroke of creative like inspiration come to me while I'm sitting there meditating, and I have this. I would label it a craving. I have a desire to hold on to that thought so that after I get out of the meditation, I can go write this down and I can implement it when I finally have like the internet back. But that is not something that is against the practice. That is practicing against the way Vipassana works. And so you come back and you come back and you come back, and that's really hard to keep yourself in check like that. And then just the fact that there's no pleasures. They remove all the pleasures. It feels like you put yourself into like a it feels like you've put yourself into a self-imposed prison, because like you're in these small rooms that like are really not that separate from one another. They have like a short, like 7-foot tall wall in between you, and then like you can hear every little sound of all the people around you. You're in a small building. There's 8 of us. Your bed is super basic. No technology of any sort. You have no contact with anyone in the outside world. I came alone. I didn't even have any recognition with anyone's face or anything. And you're observing this noble silence, so you're really like in an alone world, and that's hard for me as an extrovert at the beginning, I think. And then you're also figuring out how things work. Like, how do I serve myself food? How do I clean my plate? How should this be organized? What's the schedule fully like? And then you're questioning, like, do I have the mental endurance for this? Because being expected to meditate 11 hours a day or 12 hours a day or whatever it was a lot. that's a lot. And so I would go back for my little break, 10 minutes, and then I would just be like, it's like 10 a.m. and I feel like it's 10 p.m. I'm ready to sleep. My mind is like fully exhausted. And I'm still certain they talk about like keep that equanimous mind everywhere you're going, even when you're not in a formal sitting meditation pose. You still recognize that like a balanced, still like understanding your sensations, still staying non-reactive, still staying focused. You're not clinging to desire to sleep or anything. You're not trying to find some like I think for me, coming from a yoga background, coming from like a lot of body work and massage and acupuncture and herbs and things, I'm always looking for these outside things to fix me. And here you really stop searching for that. You're not trying to find some instant fix or anything like that. You're just observing how things are right now, and the fix comes by fixing your mental. And when your mental doesn't hold on to sensations anymore the way that it used to, then nothing can sway your mind. And that's like a really powerful understanding that I started to grasp by like day 3 intellectually. I grasped it. I didn't experience it until maybe day 6, 7. But once I had it intellectually, I had faith that this is a very worthwhile process for me to endure, even though it was super hard to endure. I had that understanding, like if I do this, this is going to be a wonderful thing waiting for me on the other end, and a life skill that I will be developing. So I got to be all in. Yeah, and then once you're all in, at least me, I want to be all in. I want to really develop my mind. I want to be. I'm not going to change positions, even though I naturally want to squeeze my face and I want to like kick my foot out and I want to massage my knee, which is totally asleep, and all these things. It's like, nope, that is an aversion. I will not give in to my aversions. And you start to recognize that you can shift your focus a little bit. And so even though you have this very intense, gross sensation in your knee, like I did a lot, you change your attention to your thigh and then to your abdomen. And then that sensation becomes, you still feel it, but it becomes a little bit more distant because your focus is shifted to something else. So yeah, you start to learn these little tools, and then you definitely start to recognize later on, like, this is going to be wonderful for just living daily life. I can recognize how to observe the feelings that are happening in me, and I feel confident that my emotional stability, my mental stability, my fitness, my ability to judge things at a more like essence level, rather than just working at like a surface. Finding more like self-authenticity in my practices, and kind of getting more to the root of why you do things. All that stuff just feels really solidified in me right now, like in a very sustainable way, because I did some deep work at the root level of my mind. And that it's really hard at the beginning to work at the root level of your mind. You're never really asked to do that in your life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, it sounds like there's not really the suffering isn't seen as so much that you kind of change your relationship to those sort of, like you're saying, cravings and aversions. You kind of change just the way that you even view that. But was there like a best moment? Was there ever like a light bulb moment, or did you get glimpses of this nibbana or anything like that?
I would never claim that I felt nibbana. No, I feel like I'm still far from that, because nibbana is where you don't feel any sense of suffering. And I still had suffering and still had, they call them sankharas, which are reactions that embed themselves in your body. They become a pattern of reactions. And so, like for me, I've had tons of injuries, and when I have an intense sensation in my spine, I have a natural reaction to want to turn it and put it in some sort of alignment that I've decided is correct in my mind. And I just notice myself, I still come to that desire. Even sometimes I naturally start to just sway my weight to the right and twist a little bit to see, is there going to be some pop that happens? And that's not full Vipassana. So no, I mean, I definitely did not experience nibbana, but for wonderful moments, like so many, I would say, just a feeling of coming coming out of the center, sometimes you come out of the hall and you have your break time start, and you see like the sun's rising, you hear the birds, you see the trees swaying in the wind, the temperature is like perfect sometimes. um, you go stand I would stand on the ground, take my sandals off, and just feel the subtle vibration of the earth, and just be like, wow, I'm really experiencing nature right now at so many levels. It's outside me, it's inside me, and I feel such a harmony. Um, that one was amazing. And then like some of my sleeping was really wonderful sometimes. Uh, I would go in really long dream states that felt really pure, and uh, yeah, just you're there's something wonderful about like losing your control over things, just succumbing to the flow. And I would notice I would be walking and I would just start to uh, like sway my hands a little bit and move my fingers and feel the wind in them, and just like feel how easy it was to breathe sometimes. And just these little checks, I would just be, like, that's not really full Vipassana also. You're not supposed to alter your breathing, but sometimes I would just take a slow inhale and I could just do it for 20 seconds and I could just feel my whole back open and open, and then an exhale and my body just sink. And I'm not like holding my weight in any port. My joints are not like suffering. Like sometimes it would just feel like true freedom in that sense, yeah. But it would be momentary, and then it would go back to, oh, I have a knee pain. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I want to share this experience with somebody right now. How am I going to share it with them? Oh, I'll probably tell them like this. Honestly, I thought about our podcast interview quite often. It's like, how am I going to explain this? And in a way, those things are still like cravings. Those are attaching yourself to like thought processes, and I mean, they're wonderful thought processes. So I'm not judging myself for it. You're not supposed to judge yourself for it. I'm a newbie. I'm a beginner. It's my first 10-day course.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. And so how was, like, I mean, as somebody who is immersed in the technological world that we live in, like, were those sort of cravings, did that come up at all?
Um, I didn't feel a really strong craving to check Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. Um, I definitely had cravings for communication, and especially like living in Thailand. I don't. I mean, my communication with people that I love is through my technology. So definitely like wondering. I had some things that were in the works beforehand. Like I'm trying to set up a couple internships with my college to find people to help me with my podcast, and I had made a lot of progress. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh well, I recognize that this process isn't done, but I hopefully it will get done by you guys because I'm gone for 10 days, and I just like wonder what did they say in their message back to that. Um, I was like definitely craving to read messages for sure. Um, Definitely craving to listen to music sometimes. Definitely some songs were in my head, and I was like, oh, it would feel so good to listen to that song right now. But they take your phone, they take your laptop, they take your passport, your wallet, and they put it in a locker, and you don't get it for the whole time. Uh, and definitely a lot of things to do with my podcast. I wanted to have my recorder and wanted to just speak to it because sometimes I just felt like my words were flowing so easily. Like my thought process was so clear and so sharp and so pure. And yeah, there were times I was like, wow, I could really say something pretty profound right now that I could put in my podcast and would really help people's lives. And uh, it's just a little test for me on that. Like I can remember these things. I can institute them when I'm back in the world. These are small things on my road to relieving myself of suffering and being a truly great human. Like these things can wait. These things might change into something else. This is had to look at things at a more meta level. Like technology for me is about these like really specific micro sort of focuses that are very temporal. There's like an instant thing that feels good, and in general I think I use technology productively. I don't think it's like a huge time suck for me. but I recognize like there's something bigger going on here that I need to stay in tune to, and technology would be distracting me. So mm, it was a struggle, especially in the beginning, to be going without. But it was a struggle that I was able to endure.
Yeah. Yeah. And now now that you've left there, the 10 days are over, either what are you going to do to make sure the practice sticks with you? Or what things stuck with you the most from the practice, do you think?
Well, I think that the teacher talks about how one of the best barometers or yardsticks you can use to see if this practice is sticking with you and if it's something that you're truly committed to is how much you share it with others. Um, and one of my first things I did was I've been out for more than 24 hours now, and I still haven't really gone back into the world of technology fully yet. Um, I wanted to maintain this purity that I've had to be able to share it with my loved ones. And so I called my dad and my brother and my mom and my mom's boyfriend. And I talked to each of these people about what I just experienced and really said, like, I think this would be a great thing for you to do. and by I think by sharing it with others, that will be one measurement for me, and it will help me. I think by developing a lifestyle that is service based will definitely be helping me to live more simply. Will definitely be very helpful. And I'm in a place right now in Thailand where financially the strains are not very concerning. The weather is very peaceful and good. My relationships are strong here. My freedom is high. So I'm in a place right now where I can take those baby steps. So he talks about like, right now you've planted a small seed, and every seed that you plant bears fruit from that seed. So if you plant seeds of positivity, you bear positive fruit. So everything multiplies. And so you've planted a very, very great seed by doing this 10-day course. And it sprouted into a baby plant right now. It's got the first few inches out of the ground. You need to really give it a lot of protection right now. You need to put a fence around it so that no animals can come eat it. You need to feel like you can, for me, I take that as I need to feel like I can express myself. I don't need to be worried about people judging me, people thinking that I'm like some religious crazy person all of a sudden, because it's not about any supernatural religious sort of devotional thing at all. It's just an art of living in this very moment, and experiencing like a peaceful heaven within is kind of the explanation I gathered about that. So you need to protect yourself from doubt, from laziness, from fear that this is bad for you. And so yeah, you protect yourself, and then you give it water, you give it sunshine, you give it proper nutrients. And so for me, those things will be observing my sensation when I can, as best as I can, when I'm walking, when I'm talking, when I'm listening, when I'm playing something, when I'm doing technology. Becoming more and more attuned to my senses is going to really help me. And then maintaining a daily practice, so sitting in the morning and the evenings as much as I can. Creating like a sacred space would be helpful, where you have a cushion and a quiet area and not a lot of distractions and whatnot, all that. So keeping the practice, and I know everything about how to practice. It's not a complicated practice, so I don't need to have some guru or some teacher explaining things to me. I don't need like a guided practice, really. So that's on me. I'm my own master on these things, and I can do that, I think. And then on an even bigger level, to stay committed to it, you should be. They recommend you to be coming back to these immersive meditation center settings. So that's where you really start to you make a lot of progress in a short period of time by doing that. So they want you to be taking more courses in the future, and I feel like that's very likely for me. I don't know when the next one will be, but I would say within the next couple of years, for sure, you'll see me at another one.
That's awesome. What was I going to? One of the things you did send me I think it's like a brochure that they have there or something. And it's specifically, like you mentioned, it talks about how it's not a religious based practice. Anybody can do it. There's some stuff that's rooted in Buddhism, but, it's not specifically any faith based, mechanism. So they really did stress that in a couple of different places. But how do you feel that this fits in with your religious faith? And how do they intertwine or complement each other?
Oh, I think that it fits in with what I just felt more and more confirmed in my belief system. Definitely. I think what Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha 2,500 years ago, what he found out was really wonderful, and he was an amazing teacher and taught very compassionately the way he devoted his life. And so it definitely helped me, and the stories they told about him and the ways in which he helped people, and how he also said, like, don't create any sort of like religious shrines about me. Don't create any particular sect that worships me. Do this thing, do this experience. Like, I don't need any sort of like devotion from you. I need you should do this experience. You are going to find this yourself. I can't do this for you. And I mean, that's a big part of my mentality on things too. So yeah, absorbing those like wonderful qualities and making it a practice of your own, and not accepting things as they're told to you, but actually like experimenting with them and coming up with your own nuanced personal understanding of how it is as it's experienced by yourself. That all fits with me super well. And that's, I think, at the core of what this program was. It wasn't Buddhism. Buddhism is more about like creating like systems of worship and devotion and shrines and temples in which like you just create like a devotional understanding where people go and they do their rite or their ritual where they pray and they do this thing 3 times and they avoid pointing the feet and all these things. And they're really like, these things are great for people. They make people feel uplifted. They make people like more grounded in their faith. All these things are helpful parts of the practice, but you don't need those things, or you could have those things. And for me, I come from my religious background is Christianity. I come from like non-denominational Christianity, and I just had so many experiences growing up where I felt confirmed that there is a God, and for me, God was like a supreme or higher power than me, that kind of has some level of understanding in the sense that nature does too. Nature and God may be the same thing. Nature may be part of what God is. But it's a general intelligence and understanding and creativity that works and flows and makes sense and has like a wonderfulness to it that you can tap into if you have that relationship with it. And so I grew up with like a relationship with God, and that was a lot of like through like Jesus was my version of Buddha and where I come from. So you keep learning about the wonderful qualities and teachings of Jesus, the ways in which he loved people, helped people when he's dying at crucifixion on the cross. You start to like, you get into these situations. I was going to plays, watching movies, talking about it in youth groups, singing songs about it. And you really start to appreciate like he's having people stone him to death and kill him and say just the worst things. And he's still, these people don't understand. I love them. Like I wish the best for them in their life. I have, every bit of him is full of unconditional love. And that's a big part that I keep coming back to Christianity, is just that recognition that there's this unconditional love for my life. If I have gratitude, if I recognize it, if I appreciate it, if I serve others, all these like little instances help you tap into that feeling that I've gotten from Christianity and confirmation of my belief in that. And I think that this art of living through Vipassana definitely just like solidifies those feelings you have. You recognize how wonderful life can be and how compassion can just swell up in you, and how you can recognize ways in which you love things at a very deep, subtle level in ways that you didn't recognize before. And I've had little instances that have gotten me to very deep levels of my mind without me wanting to be there. Like I fell off of a mountain and almost died and laid there for 12 hours and waiting for like search and rescue helicopter to come get me. And I definitely thought a lot about some metaphysical things, like what my relationship with God is like and how I've been in Christianity, and have I been just this like devotional worshiper because I want to look good for my parents, or I want to, look good in my community. So you ask yourself these intentional things. And I think that this practice definitely helps anyone that comes from a religious background to develop a greater understanding of their personal religious viewpoint in a way that is like their own personal experience of that religion, and not just them being like a member or a contributor or doing this rite or this ritual or having this like faith-based devotion without a true understanding of living it. So yeah, this teacher even talks about this, and one of the things he talked about was Christianity, and he mentioned some of these things. He's like, being a Christian, one starts to realize that's about like living the qualities of Jesus. Jesus doesn't need your testimony that he's the Son of God. He knows that already. And if you believe in Christianity, you think that. If you don't believe in Christianity, you don't think that. Jesus doesn't need your testimony of whether or not he's the Son of God. Jesus asked people and to absorb his qualities, to have these fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, kindness, gentleness, self-control, compassion, wisdom, all these sort of things. And that's the mark of like a true Christian, because you're doing it, like they said, the samadhi is at the experiential level. The panya, which is the wisdom, is at the experiential level. They're not devotional understandings. They're not intellectual understandings. You don't just like say, I read the Bible for 30 minutes a day, I'm a Christian. It's about, I read the Bible today, I have an intellectual understanding, but I've practiced some of the parables of the Bible today by doing this and this and this in my life. And so this outwardness of serving without expecting anything in return, I think that matches so much between Christianity and Buddhism. And I mean, I expect probably the same in Islam and Hinduism. The leaders of these things, like the gods that they worship and serve, they also have these very amazing effervescent qualities that ask people to live a life like in accordance with that. And so religion has been commercialized, and there's like this desire to like convert a lot of people for numbers and for funding and for all these like little things that are not really at the root or the essence of what that religion's about. And Buddhism is not this Vipassana is not concerned with any of that, and I'm not concerned with any of that. So I feel really confirmed in that. And then also just occupationally, I felt really confirmed in my decision to become a teacher. I think that that's a really service-based profession where you're really helping people to come into their own thinking for themselves. You're presenting new perspectives and ideas, and education is just so much at the core of how you experience reality. So you see yourself as part of the flow of history. You see yourself as an agent in creating the future. You see yourself as like an active process of resource usage and consumption and all these. When you start to like be mindful of all these things, you too can become a wonderful contributor to society. And I'm going to be in a role where I help people do that, and that's really awesome. I'm not in a role where I'm like fighting and stressful and angry and like trying to make a lot of profit for myself at the expense of others. I feel really confirmed that I've chosen the noble profession.
Yeah. Living with purpose. I'm very close to going to bed here. It's for those of you who will be listening to this, almost 11 o'clock p.m. here in Michigan. What time is it there?
Almost 11 o'clock a.m. In Thailand.
11 o'clock a.m. in Thailand. But I just want to speak briefly, one more question, and then we'll have you lead us in a meditation. But the people of purpose, let's just talk about that. If you want to relate it, if you had any revelations during the Vipassana retreat, or just talk about what the podcast is all about, because I think it kind of ties a lot of what we're saying together.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I love this project I've started. So yeah, about 4 months ago, I started a podcast called People of Purpose, and it features inspiring people whose stories help you to see things differently, develop intentionality to your lifestyle, and find the necessary resources to like seek and find your passions, with the goal of finding and fulfilling your purpose. Um, so my podcast is here to like help you develop like the courage, and the wisdom to be able to reach these things. And so I bring on a guest that has a really interesting story, that is doing something very authentic to themselves, following their own path, and kind of break down like who their mentors are, how they make their decisions, how they overcome fears, what it feels like to thrive, what success means to them, how their purpose plays a role in their overall happiness, what their relationships look like, and ways in which they have impacted communities, and ideas they have about leadership, and all of these things that I think are really important questions for people to be talking about. And so, yeah, the podcast is like, I guess it started off kind of selfishly as a project for me to have a platform to ask these questions to great people on. And I started with people I knew already that I really respected, and gave them a reason to talk to me for an hour like that. Um, and then you get articles and books and documentaries and all these things recommended, start to consume some of that. And then and I also viewed it as an outreach thing. I wanted to help people that are some steps behind me, and many steps behind these guests I have, that maybe feel a little bit lost, a little bit purposeless, a little bit just going through the motions of life, doing maybe what their cultural upbringing kind of told them they needed to be doing, and are searching for some more, intentional ways of living, and ways in which you can develop consciousness over that authentic intentionality. And yeah, so that's what the podcast kind of was born from, and I think it's been going really well, and been starting to get some new guests that have been people I didn't know before, that are giving TED Talks and writing best-selling books and all these things that are also similarly aligned with these topics. And more, I'm learning things and applying them to my life, and having these wonderful results, where I just the world or universe or God is coming together in a way that's just really beautiful, and in a way that I would have never expected. And that's how I know you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking that. I mean, it's always exciting to hear about all the different stuff going on. We have a weekly call, but now it's been kind of put on pause since the Thailand. But yeah, it's always a good chat, for sure. So, and the universe is presenting itself in beautiful ways. I think, both of our lives, which it's a give and take. Sometimes the love you make is equal to the love you take. Shout out to the Beatles for that one, but I feel like it's true,
Yeah. I noticed you growing a lot too. You speak so easily about some of these topics. You're definitely a super good listener to me. You're definitely become one of my mentors the past several months, and it's been great to kind of work through some of these ideas and some of the confusions I may have, and some of the struggles I have. And I'm completely doing this solo. It feels like I get lots of creative help from people like you and some others. But when it comes down to doing the work of putting those creative ideas into action, I'm doing it myself. So I've had to learn all these new things, audio editing, and yeah, all the production and social media marketing and outreach to guests, and people. I mean, one of the things I love is people that are like, I just listened to this episode, I really liked this topic that they talked about, it really applies to my life, can I have a call with you soon? And I've just gotten to reconnect with these people from various points of my past that have been amazing. And yeah, I really feel like I'm having an influence on others as I'm being heavily influenced, and it's all for very virtuous things.
yeah, it's a good thing to be a part of. That's for sure. Now we've been talking about it kind of, but just briefly here, you're in Thailand. This would be, what is this, your second time over there? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been here in and out multiple times, but yeah, I lived here for a little more than a year when I was teaching in
And now you're
2016
back. You're going to be there till when?
till May. By the middle of May, I need to come back to the States because I'm starting a master's of teaching program in San Francisco and have a job
Hey,
there at a charter
that's
school.
the breaking news. Tanner's going. You're going to San Fran. That's awesome, man. That's super
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. But so I'm trying to enjoy life a little bit right
yeah.
now. See some people that mean a lot to me. I'm trying to figure out a little bit about some questions about maybe where I want to start to plant my roots. Um, I have a lot of free time here. The everything is just so cheap, and the culture is so wonderful, and I really feel like this is a place that I thrive a lot. And as I'm trying to do something like create a podcast or I teach English online, I don't need to be in any certain location for these things. So I've chosen a spot to base myself that I feel like I really can live very purposefully and intentionally and develop some of these new things. I'm learning a lot. I brought a stack of books like as high as my waist. I'm just trying to spend a lot of time in my hammock reading those and being meditating every day and producing a podcast and just developing these things that I feel like are forever going to be a part of me and therefore become a part of others that eat the fruits of the tree I'm growing.
Yeah, yeah. The farmer Tanner. Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on, sharing us. Kind of fresh, a couple 24 hours after you got off the retreat. There was some. I can't wait to listen to this again and again. There's some really good stuff you're saying there about some of the practice that you learned. So thanks again for coming on. We'll for sure talk again. We'll link up the podcast. I would highly recommend it. He did drop a little bit, made a kind of a quick reference to it about falling down the side of a cliff and needing to get helicopter taken away from, and I think that's the first episode, right, where you just kind of go into it about that. Yeah, so yeah, that along with a bunch of other awesome guests that he gets on there, I would highly recommend listening to it. But thanks again for coming on. And the last little parting gift here, if you want to just lead us in a brief meditation, kick it off.
Okay. Well, find a relaxing position where your posture is straight. Can be seated in a chair, can be cross-legged on the floor. Clasp your hands in your lap, one over the other. And start to come into this space mentally. Start with a calm, quiet mind. An alert and attentive mind. Balanced and equanimous mind. Begin to observe the respiration around your nostrils. Not changing anything about your breathing. If it's a little bit more in the right, that's okay. More in the left, it's a little bit blocked. If it's a little bit itchy, whatever it is, come into that sensation without any desire to change it. As you feel the air coming in and out, maybe take note of its temperature. You may notice it's a little cooler coming in, a little hotter coming out. Notice any sensations you have around your nostrils, maybe in the walls, maybe in the tip, maybe just below your nose in that mustache area above your upper lip. See if you can feel any vibration, any sensation, and try to stay focused on that. If you do find that you've lost your focus, that you're on a train of thought, it's okay. Come back to that balanced, equanimous mind. Observe the respiration again. In and out. Again, see if you can feel any sensation in this section around the nose. If you can feel sensation, start to move your attention to the top of your head. Be careful not to change your posture or to move your eyes. Just start to notice, how does the top of your head feel? Do you feel any pulsing, throbbing, any gentle, subtle tingling? Maybe it just feels numb or blank. If you can grasp any sensation in this area, see if you can follow it. Maintain some attention for 30 seconds, 1 minute. Start to notice if it relates to any other part of your body. Or maybe feel it shower over your head. Again, don't try to change your sensation. Don't try to imagine or visualize a new sensation. Observe the sensation as it is right now. You may notice that another part of your body has clenched up. Be sure not to make that change your position, not to bring you out of the focus. Keep your mental concentration right here at the top of your head. Let's begin to scan the entire head. Do you notice any sensation? Maybe a strong, intense sensation. Maybe it's a subtle, tingling sensation. Maybe you feel hot or cold, itch. You may notice that your forehead is a little bit tightened. Maybe your jaw is clenched. You don't need to necessarily try to unclench your jaw, but just put your focus right there where that clenching is. And start to feel what happens to your body when your focus is right there. Keep the understanding of impermanence. None of these feelings, sensations you have right now, none of them are part of you. They're not with you forever. They too will pass. They will change. As you recognize this feeling in your head, move down to your throat. Scan your face. Notice any feelings maybe behind your eyeballs or under your lips or mouth. Or observe the feeling of your tongue right now. don't need to judge yourself if you've been in any clenched position or are really fidgety. Just come back to focusing your concentration on that particular area that has that sensation. You'll find that you begin to understand maybe why you wanted to move your tongue or swallow or itch your face, scratch your face. As you observe these things, you begin to notice that you can just observe them. You don't need to take an action to change them. You continue like this through your shoulders, your biceps, triceps, forearms, hands, fingers. Bring your attention to your chest. Take note of your breathing in the chest. Is it expansive? Is it constricted? Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it effortless? Difficult? And bring the attention down to your abdomen. Try to go to any place that you feel a sensation. Tingling or squeezing. Maybe some pain. And again, just be that observer. Recognize its impermanence. And like this, we move to the upper back and the lower back. Down through the buttocks, your glutes, your hips, your groin. Even scan the little tiny muscles around your anus. Bring your attention over your thighs, your hamstrings. Again, coming to any sensation, not trying to change or alter that sensation, just observing it as it is. Come to your knees. You may notice some twinging, some pain, some maybe pleasurable feeling. Maybe you feel a pulse in another part of your body. Stay focused on your knees as they are. And symmetrically like this, come down your calves, the front of your shins, bring the attention to your ankles. Come to the bottom of your feet. Scan section by section, part by part, piece by piece. Or you can scan the entirety, depending on how sharpened your focus is. Come to the tops of your feet. You're not changing or moving your toes or trying to alter the state, just observing. And then come toe by toe, your pinky and your ring and your middle. Second toe and the big toe. And then like this, just come with a free flow all the way from your toes, up through your feet, up through your calves, your ankles, shins, the quads and the hamstrings, the buttocks, through the abdominals. Keep circling up through your chest and your back, lower back and upper back. Feel this wash, free flow of subtle vibration through your arms, out your fingers, back up through your fingers and your hands, through your forearms, through your upper arms. Come to the shoulder area. Coming to the connection between the shoulders and the neck. Scan the neck, the throat. Feel any subtle, gentle energy, sensation coming up through the bottom of your head, through your jaw, your cheeks, just the back of your head. Coming to your ears, to your eyes, forehead, to your temples. Keep moving around the back of the head. And like this, keep washing your way all the way to the top of your head where we began. Come back to the breathing at your nostrils. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings experience love and happiness and joy. And like this, we compassionately finish the practice. In the language at the time of the Buddha, Pali language, if you believe this sentiment to be true, about love, joy, kindness, happiness for all, we close with a sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You can open your eyes and clench your hands. Come out of the practice. Take a rest. Take a rest. Thank you.